Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest in our series of virtual seminars from the Audrain, Concours, and Motor Week here in Newport, Rhode Island. I'm Donald Osborne, the CEO of the Audrain Group, and we're very excited to welcome you to the latest in this series of conversations with interesting personalities throughout the motoring world. And today is a truly interesting panel, and something which is quite special. Recently here in the US, it's been the month of the woman. However, this is something that I think transcends special occasions, because each of these three ladies are people who are so incredibly interesting and fascinating, and are great models for me, certainly, as somebody who's an enthusiast and someone who enjoys engaging in cars as thoroughly as they possibly can. And that's what we're all about here at the Audrain, how we engage with cars. And our panelists are Angelica Fuentes, who was born in Mexico City, and she started her motor racing career at 13, and has gone from strength to strength, encouraged by her father, who's a well-known racer, Edgardo Fuentes. And she has participated in regularity rallies, and as well as some vintage rallies, and even the Pikes Peak Hill Climb. And we'll talk a little later that sort of her specialty has been La Carapan Americana, which is, I will say this with great affection, one of the most insane events ever devised by humans. So the fact that she has been a champion in that multiple times says a great deal about Angelica, her drive, her ambition, her talent, and her great interests. She's currently based in the UK, and drives some very, very interesting vintage cars as well. Also with us is Queenie Laumann. And Queenie is someone I've known for a long time. Her father, Evert Laumann, is the founder of, actually he's not the founder, your grandfather was the founder of the Laumann collection. Her father, Evert, founded the Laumann Museum in The Hague, one of the most incredible museums I've ever visited, and a museum and an institution that is very much in line with what we do here at the Audrain, which is the fact that we are the caretakers of amazingly important and exquisite historic cars, but they're used. They're taken out to events and used enthusiastically the way their builders intended. We were just chatting about the fact that Evert Laumann has done the historic Mille 29 times. Queenie has done it how many times?
22.
22 times. And by the way, not in the comfortable late 1950s cars. We're talking about doing it in the 1920s cars that are all about exposure and power and lots of go and not lots of stops. She's also participated in a number of other great historic rallies, and across Europe and around the world, and in cars from the turn of the 20th century through the mid 20th century and beyond. She's also a great judge and regular attendee at Concours d'Elegance events as well. So she appreciates a great car parked as well as on the run. Mm-hmm. And last but not least is Katerina Kavalova, and she was born in Slovakia, and I love this. She's born into a non-motorsports family, but nonetheless, she has become absolutely renowned around the world for her exploits in both vintage cars and contemporary race cars. And that's something that we'll explore a little bit in this conversation. And the idea of driving, both in historic events and contemporary events, shows that Katherina is somebody who is totally committed to motorsport at all levels and all forms, and finds various and amazing pleasures in all parts of it. So welcome very much to you all. And to start the conversation off, Katherina, I know that coming from a non-motorsports family, people ask, gee, how'd you get into cars? Did you grow up with them? I grew up in New York City, where my family didn't need a car, and they didn't actually buy their first car until I was 12 years old. So how did you go from non-motorsports to operating in contemporary and vintage motorsports?
Yeah, it's the usual question. It's a normal question, absolutely. The funny thing is, my mother, she even didn't have a driving license. Would you believe it? So absolutely non-car family. I would say the cars found me, if that makes sense somehow. So started to join the Concours d'Elegance, couple of events with friends, and somehow found it very fascinating, you know, this kind of automotive hobby, and moved from the navigating seat to the driver's seat, and that was done. So yeah, pretty much, you know, slowly but very, you know, I got very hooked, as you know, in the meantime. So yeah, it's no particular story like that.
So from the Concours d'Elegance, then you got into vintage events. So using these cars on the move. That's where it came from.
Yeah, you know, I found recently a photograph, very old, when I was 2 years old, and it's a Christmas tree when my brother built a car from cardboard for me. He even painted sort of like stickers, sponsors, invented something, and apparently he was just he put me into this cardboard car without wheels. And yeah, I must have somehow fell in love with this kind of vehicle. I think that was the first experience. Yeah, no, I joined Classic Car Club in Germany. It calls Schnaufer Club, one of the biggest, oldest German classic car clubs. And yeah, so I had many friends who had this passion, and it was very, you know, easy to jump on me, this kind of, you know, love for cars, and stayed from until now. That's the background.
And Queenie, again, you're coming from a slightly different thing. So for generations, cars have been in the Lalaman blood. So it's sort of natural that you took to it. But what was it like as a young woman, as a girl, sort of growing up and being engaged with cars in the way that you have been for so long?
Well, I guess it was, well, we're three sisters. So my, you know, in that sense, for my father, it was at least one of us really into it. Yeah, and it just started like, yeah, for example, like the first time I drove at the Festival of Speed, I think it was like the second year, and it was like, here's a car, you know, drive. And yeah, so it's yeah, and I learned to drive, you know, on a little back road, and you know, like you said, Katharina, you had the cardboard box. The bit that I remember is sitting in the back, not even with my father. The first memory was sitting in the back of a Simca that my grandmother had. She got her driver's license at 50 something, failed it because my father told her not to drive like an old woman, and sitting in the back and jumping, you know. Yeah, that's, and then it just grew from, I guess my father feeling, oh, okay, yes, she, it's okay, you know, slowly. Yeah, but he loved his rallies, and you know, I've done the London to Brighton run. The first time was with him in the Napier, the 100 horsepower Napier, and I think I was about 15, and I have pictures, you know, they put a helmet on me and there's no seat to hold on, and in those days he really drove like well, there was no Sunday shopping, you know, so then the streets were a little bit, I don't want to say how old I am, well, you kind of know, but you know, it was driving great, you know, and that was the first, you know, car, well, that was a veteran car event. That's the first real event that I remember taking part, and probably, yeah, I was so young at the end, I probably would have said, never do that again, but you know, he convinced me, you know, and I love it. Yeah. And I wouldn't, yes, it's great doing things with him too, you know, and like you said, Donald, he's done 29 millimillias and he's 80. I'm trying to convince him one more, 30.
Yeah, somehow I can't imagine being at the Millimillia and not seeing your father behind the wheel of some massive Mercedes and just having a wonderful time. And
Exactly.
And Angie, now I know that obviously having a race car driver for a father, you were encouraged to drive, and I think it probably informs certainly the kind of driving that you like. Tell us a little bit about that, how you got started.
Well, actually, you just make me think, well, which is my first memory when I was little. And that, I think he had a plan because he was a racer all his life and he had an accident and then he stopped racing because he was in a coma for a week and, very sad story. And then he married, had children. And then every Christmas, we used to get these pedal cars and things that was very active. So he really guided us towards that direction. Like, let's see, out of 4, because we are 3 girls and 1 boy. So, and then he went back running, and it's when I really wanted, I follow my dad. For me, my dad is my big hero, and I love him to bits. And I always help him put in the stickers, and he knew that I wanted to race a rally. And I remember the first time he came back home and he said, my first rally was with my dad and I was 13. I had a broken leg. I was with crutches, so it was just unbelievable, this story. Everybody was saying, what are you doing with your daughter in a rally car? Like, well, when there's passion, there's passion. And so that was a lovely story. That was my first rally with my dad. And then one day he came back. I was older. I was maybe 15. And he said, I know that you want to be a driver and here are the keys. I pay for the entry fee. There's a regularity rally next weekend and off you go, girl. So that day, that weekend, my brother was supposed to be my co-driver. He got really, with a bad flu. He couldn't co-drive for me. I was very upset. And my dad came in the morning, knocked at the door and he said, Kelly, let's go, get ready. And he said, well, I don't have a co-driver. I will be your co-driver. I was just horrible daughter because I was like, you're a driver. You don't know how to, I will remember. And I will remember there I was, and that was my first, I spun the car, I almost crashed, I was shaking, and he said, come on, we're losing time, and then he started teaching me, you never hold the steering wheel like this. Lovely memories that I have with my dad, and from there, I just got the bug, and here I am 37 years later, still wanted to do more and race more, and very lucky I'm privileged to have done so many events. So, sorry.
Well, that, okay, very good. That is also a very interesting thing as well, to enter your first event and have a great driving lesson during the event as well, which brings me to a point which people have asked, who may not be familiar, who are watching the show, may not be familiar with regularity rallies, regularity trials, and the differences between them and a race event. Because I know for myself personally, I've done a lot of regularity rallying, including the Mille Miglia, and I pay no attention to the regularity part because I haven't got the patience. So I just sort of drive along and follow somebody who I know is very good at it, so I don't end up being too bad at it. Do you happen to think, what are the characteristics of someone who can do extremely well in regularity rallies? Angie, what are they?
It's precision. It's just it's just concentration. It's just like the work between the driver and co-driver, because you're talking about every second. It's just not a minute, or it's every second count, because you need to maintain a speed. In Mexico, they change the speed every kilometer or every milestone. In Europe, they will tell you, like the regularity rally is 20 miles, and for 20 miles, you have an average speed of 60. In Mexico, every milestone or kilometers, we use kilometers, you change average. So you're braking, you're accelerating, and one ahead and one behind. So every second you're ahead, or every second you are behind your real time as you are running the stage, those are the bad points. So whoever has less bad points is whoever wins the rally. So it's a lot of work, because, for example, I work every 100 meters. Every 100 meters, you have to have your time, and then you need to control, keep reminding the driver. And for example, in Europe, I love the European regularity rallies because you have a lot of diversions as well. You have junctions, and all of a sudden you get to a split road that you have 5 roads, and then you you have to tell numbers, time, and point out the right direction. Especially, for example, I have done Monte Carlo Historic, and you know, French. I don't speak French at all, and pronounce the whatever. It's just like, but it's fun, and it's just as I say, it's a really hard work team, you know, work as a team, because your driver has to listen, and you say one ahead, he needs to know that he has to brake a little bit and then carry on the speed. So it's a lot of technique. Yeah, so no, I love regulated rallies. Well, obviously compared to the speed rallies, they are just really different, but I love as well speed rallies.
And Katharina, since you race GT4 and do regularity rallies, what characteristics and talents carry over from one to the other, and which ones you have to completely turn off when you're doing one kind of event and another?
Well, to start with, when you do GT4 or all kind of motorsport racing, you are just on your own in the car. So in case you mess it up, as we say, that it's your fault. You can't blame anyone. In the regularities events, the navigator is the boss. So to start with, is amazing. I have a high respect of professional rallying teams. So it's a teamwork, and that's amazing thing. What is very challenging, and it's not easy. You have to really understand each other very well, exactly as Angelica explains. And so that is a different aspect. When I compare it to racing, to GT4, especially when you ask, it's very professional. It's a high level of information which you have to deliver, or you know, your team is watching you all the time anyway, but still it's down to you as a driver. And there are pretty much no excuses. It's you, and you have to deliver, and that's different. And it's of course about speed, about the perfect lap with all perfect, you know, turns and corners. So very different to average speed within whatever 500 meters or 1 mile. So yeah, it's very different. But endurance racing compared to rallying, there's a certain crossover, in my opinion, because that's a teamwork again. So it's a teamwork, and that always reminds me of rallying. Yeah. So as a Mille, as Queenie said before, it's a long rally, very challenging, and you have to function all the time. You have to have brilliant driver, brilliant co-driver. So yeah, that's my view.
Yes, and Katharina, thank you very much. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I had to say I've enjoyed so much about doing all these seminars is the fact that I have an idea about how I'd like the conversation to flow, and without having any sort of a script, all of the guests all the time give me effortless transitions. And so thank you very much, Katharina, because Queenie, I was going to ask you about the endurance aspect of this. I know that a lot of people think, oh, you know, a vintage regularity rally are just sort of people swanning around through the countryside gently in old cars and sort of waving at people. But anyone who has done the Mille Miglia once, certainly not 22 times, realizes that it's 12 or 13 hours in the car behind the wheel or in the seat. So A, how do you prepare for something like that, Queenie? And how do you best deal with it during the event?
I think to prepare is to have the cars need to be prepared very, very well. I mean, that is key. I mean, so, you know, but okay, you can prepare as much as you want. Just the tiniest little thing has to break, and then yes. So in my 22 years, I've only once not finished. Yeah, and it still hurts. But you know, I think it is very hard for all of us driving, but because I have also that one time I was with the mechanics, you have to have respect for them, what they go through. I mean, we are driving and you know, the roads are clear and everything, but for them, yeah, I think they are it's the real team, you know, for them to know where you are. Okay, nowadays it's easier. We all have mobile phones and we've got, you know, no, now the Mille Miglia, it's longer because it's now 4 days. You know, when we started all those years ago, it started on the Thursday after evening, and it finished on the Saturday night. And yeah, that was, and in fact, you're doing the same distance. I still don't really get where you are, you know, how that is possible, but it is. And then, yeah, but then that is the rallying. But for example, even the Le Mans, for example, I take part in Le Mans Classic like Katharina does. And I mean, that is also, you know, you have to, you're driving every few hours. You have, you know, it's the sleep, going back where to sleep, all of this. Yeah, and yeah, I also did the Monte Carlo Historic 3 times. Loved it. Yeah, that was great. Except the last time on the first, literally the second hour, something broke, and that was the end of it. And then I've done the Tour Auto, which is also, again, in the competition section, which is, was a lot of fun. And I think, Katharina, you haven't done that one, but I think you should, because it is great. I've done it with my sister, driving the car from England, taking part, driving back. And that is, yeah, you're doing regularities, but also a race. And yeah, it's
on my list, definitely. It's on my top of my list pretty much. So, yeah. You know, yes, I might come back to you and say, like, come on, let's do it together as all female team, and know how it's done.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing event. Yeah. So, yeah, definitely something to be done. And let's see, yeah. But it's also tough, isn't it?
That sounds.
Oh, it's nice. It's not. It's one more challenge on top.
Yeah, the Tour Auto, it's just tough, but yes, as you know, Patrick, Peter, you get in the evenings, you have, you know, you finish it, and there are cold beer, champagne. I mean, it is France.
Great.
So they know how. Yes, it's not that, Donald, not like, you know, the Mille Miglia, where you don't have time even to have a bite for lunch. You have no time for anything. It's just drive.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I did the Mille Miglia last year in the Corona times, and we got the lunchbox. There was even a whole warm meal. It was just security, lunchbox, piece of bread, and off you go. So very tough, yeah.
It is something that I say again. I admire all 3 of you so much for what you've accomplished in this field and in these events, because I know that in the 4 Mille Miglia events that I participated in, I finished twice, and the first time I finished, I actually broke into tears on the finishing ramp because it was so incredibly emotional that, my God, I actually got through this. So it's astonishing, again, to think about some of the difficult events that you've all done. And I'll come back again, Angie, to you, because as I said earlier, the Carapan Americana is an event that just I hold in such incredible awe. The original event, if any of our viewers are not familiar with it, was a race like the old city-to-city races at the turn of the 20th century, and like the Mille Miglia in the 20th century, that ran from the bottom of Mexico to the top to demonstrate the Pan American Highway, and absolutely a full speed test of drivers and navigators and cars. And the classic version of it is not a relaxed drive through Mexico. You know, it's something, they have very different classes. And tell us a little bit about the classes and how they work in terms of the types of cars that are run and what it means to drive those.
Yeah, actually, now that you mentioned, not many people know that La Carapan Americana back in the 50s was one of the rounds of the championship that Mille Miglia was in as well. So it was one of the rounds. That's why people from Europe, a lot of European cars and drivers went to La Carapan Americana. So La Carapan Americana nowadays, it's a 5 days event, no, 7 days event, and runs from very south of Mexico City, border to border. And it's about 3,000, almost 4,000 kilometers. And you start at 7 o'clock in the morning and finish around 4 or 5 almost every day. And there are, to win La Carrera, to be an overall win of La Carapan Americana, you have to be only in 5 classes. It's Turismo Mayor, that is the top class, Turismo Production, then you have Sport Mayor, Sport Menor, and Carrera class, Panamericana class. So those are the only 5 classes that are eligible to win the overall. And then you have the historic. That's why we have now Porsches and things like that. And even some Porsches have won some stages. And they for example, last year happened that Miguel Granados won qualification and he started first. And unfortunately, he had a horrible accident. He's okay and everything, but people get confused because then, for example, he can start first today, but it doesn't matter. If he's not in Carrera class, he can win every stage. But if you're not in Carrera class, you can't win La Carrera. And Carrera class has to be up to 1954. Any car up to 1954 that was made up to 1954, that was the last year that the Carrera in the 50s ran. And obviously, you said it, and we are prepared cars. The Studebaker I raced with Gabriel, my driver, Museo del Automóvil racing team. It's a 1953 Studebaker champion, and it's a 600 and, well, last year we were down in power, we're almost 600, but normally those Studebakers, we have engines about 620, 650 horsepower. And, you know, suspension is complete. Yeah, it sounds mad, but it's just, and you know, you're talking about cars that weight, now they are obviously on a diet, they went through a diet, and the Studebaker weighs 1,600 kilos. But still, to manage to drive that the speeds, sometimes the speeds that we're doing, it's just unbelievable. People don't believe, as you said, oh, it's an old car, you know, this car can do 310 kilometers per hour. And if I say to Gabriel, flat out 300, it's just no hesitation. She told me flat out 300, and he goes flat out. And so, yeah, I love La Carrera. I can speak about La Carrera for hours because I have done 25 carreras. I'm very privileged and lucky to have done so far 25, and hopefully this year will be 26. And it's just, it's like every event. People say, what is about La Carrera? La Carrera has a very, very special spirit because some people from Europe have gone to race La Carrera and they fall in love with the race, with Mexico, with the people. They sell everything in Europe and they are living in Mexico. So it's beautiful. And then, for example, you don't get to see everybody during the year. Everybody turn up to La Carrera, and we are the best mates for a whole week. And it's and you know, people, every team help. The spirit of La Carrera, of helping each other, as you said it before, to finish La Carrera is just so emotional. It doesn't, if you win, it's great. If you don't win, it doesn't matter. But just to finish La Carrera is a big achievement. But sometimes we start 100 cars and maybe we only finish 30, 40. So yeah, and it's very tough. It's very tough in, you know, with the mechanics, because they work sometimes through the night, and then they have to go, because sometimes in Mexico we have these roads that there is only one road. So if they don't leave at 4 o'clock in the morning, they close the roads and they can't drive through. So they need to be ahead of us for you know, to be at the service point when we arrive there. And if the start is at 7, they need to leave the place at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, 2 or 3 hours before we start. So poor guys, have all my respect for for the mechanics, because they work really, really hard, you know, to prepare the car and just to get it ready for the next day.
Yes, so we're hearing a lot about teamwork in all of these events. And tell me a little bit about, again, we talked about how you all came into the sporting life. What do you see? Because a big question in all parts of the automotive world is what happens with the next generation. I will freely confess, I'm not one who believes in generational shift. I think that young people are as interested as they ever have been. What has been your experience about young people that you've seen, and what have you done to encourage young people to, especially young women, to come into the sport? Katarina?
It's a very good question. Mila Mila is a good example because there's so many spectators along the roads, and there are many, many young children and kids and are fascinated by the cars. And I think the key partly is to let them be part of it. So events where it's allowed to touch the cars, even put them into the car and have them the feeling, what is it about to be behind the wheel? Somehow they're around. That's, for me personally, I think that's the way how we can win young generation or female for this passion, for this hobby. And you see these wonderful glowing eyes of the kids, and they just, I always say, I'm sure they dream about it for the next week, the feeling like they sit in the car. So I think that's partly the way. It's very difficult to say that's the solution and let's do it, because they're much more into it, and it's a complex subject. Female, from my experience, my old racing started with the first race with the all-female team, and it was just out of fun what we did. You know, we just said, like, let's join the 24 hours Bentley whatever race, and we did, and we never practiced. My three other girls never driven a Bentley before. I mean, that was the fun. And after, yeah, and we met actually first time ever. We met the night before the race. I mean, to even like make it more crazy. And they caught the passion so much that afterwards they just kept on doing rallies and kept on doing, you know, started the racing. So it's very difficult. What starts with joke, what starts with nice idea or fun, and can be passion for life. So I think let them take a part, let them touch, let them have to feel, drive with them, let them drive. I think this is, for me, I think the way for the younger generation and for female in motorsport. It would be great to have them, for sure.
Which is a point that I actually did not bring up in my introduction of you, which I think is incredibly clever. People who know about Bentley racing back when W.O. Bentley owned the company in the 1920s, and the famous Bentley boys who went racing at Le Mans and the other venues around Europe, and frankly supported the company financially. Your group was known as the Bentley Bells, which I think is absolutely a wonderful thing, very, very clever. So I think it's absolutely great. Queenie, what have you seen in terms of the interest and involvement of the younger generation in what it is that we love so much?
I think they are, you know, especially if we think, let's say, if I talk about the museum, yeah, children, yeah, when they see a modern car now, they cannot believe that, you know, in our museum we tell the story of the automobile, and they are fascinated about, you know, seeing suddenly, oh, that's how it started, oh, that is how, you know, yeah, that is what I think is so important. The message that we are, well, that my father is giving, let's say now, and will want to bring further to people, and I also think all the events that now it's easy accessible for, most events have now become family events. People are, I feel, yeah, in the older days, I don't think, yeah, maybe Angelica with you, yes, but for example, it's your father took you and was so excited, but I think now fathers and mothers, we're all doing things much more together. You know, my children, they have come, you know, Freddie was 5 months old when he went to the Monaco Historic. My husband and I, we were racing at Le Mans Classic. We had him in, somebody was going to look after him. He didn't. And, you know, he was in the pit in his buggy at 7 months old while we were racing. Really, you know, but I think, yeah, and bringing school children into, in our museum, we have, yeah, schools and school children who come, and yeah, and yeah, everything, yeah, you can touch cars now. There are also so many events, so it's much more accessible than it used to be, I think, or I feel.
Yes,
that.
I think I feel the same way, indeed, Queenie, and the fact that in all parts of the automobile experience, it has become much more just that, experiential. People are looking at vehicles less to look at parked than to actually use. You know, the cars that people are interested in the market are the cars that are fun to drive, the cars that are great to hear, and the cars that you can actually use to do something in. So to that end, do you think that it is more about getting younger people into the events that are established, or perhaps also looking at the events that are established to see how younger people who perhaps cannot afford, you know, very, very important vintage cars can look to experience these types of events, perhaps in a modern car through regularity trials, and then find their way back to vintage cars. What are your thoughts on that, Angie?
I think that's a good point, because, for example, when I do VSCC, I love to see families there, and then, you know, as Query was saying, you know, to see all cars, very VSCC cars, like veteran cars, like, what's that, you know, like, it's back to the beginning, or to the London to Brighton. It's just like, and it's great to see that little boys get passionate, or girls, they get really excited about that. So at the end of the day, it was the beginning for what we have nowadays, modern cars. So I think we need to encourage the events, because if we start creating, for me, that's my personal view, if we start creating new events, okay, that's everything, new events bring new people, but I think it's just to grow the events that we have and encourage young people to get involved one way or the other. For example, people, when they approach me and say, you know, how can I join? And you know, for me, the first thing is join the club that is close to your house, become a member. Find out how you can get involved, and then get involved in going to help them with registration. And then, you know, all of a sudden somebody will need a co-driver and might give you the opportunity. And it's the way we all started. You know, I'm standing here after I have done 325 rallies, but I had no idea when I started, you know. So it's just the experience but it's just, and you know, there are still lots of people out there giving opportunity to newcomers. And I think that's great, to give opportunity, to open that gate, because we need young people. We need to keep this motorsport, you know, running. We're so passionate about it, and we are not getting any younger. I would love to be 15 years old with the experience I have in motor racing, and let me tell you, I will be just laughing. But unfortunately, no, it's just, and well, in my case, I think the older you get as a co-driver, it's very good, because you're very experienced and you're very knowledgeable. But I always say I learned something new in every event. Every event is new. You know, if you go to Italy to do the Modena Centauro, has new rules, but every event has a beauty of its own. But as I say, I think the new generation, and it's Query as well, was saying, you know, I see it, like, we go to Goodwood at the revival, we're there for 4 days, and I have seen teachers bringing the classroom and they are all dressed up, and then the driver, they give them the opportunity to sit in the racing car. And I think it's just a great idea, just to inspire, because out of those 38 children that they go to Goodwood, one or two will come back to the house and say, "Mommy, I want to be a racing driver," or a girl, not one. And nowadays, I think with the social media that we have, and people are more open to encourage children to become what they want to become. Because before, no, it was, if your dad was an architect, you become an architect. And nowadays, I feel that I don't have any children, so my children are my cars. But I see that nowadays a lot of parents are very supportive of what they want to do, what the children want to do. And I think that's fabulous to see, and to encourage them and to support them to get where they want to be and become.
And I think, thank you, Ajay. I think that also something that you said, Katharina, really rang true about the social aspect of it. I think that one of the things that's so wonderful about the world of automobiles, no matter which part of it you inhabit, is the fact that people who come from all sorts of different countries, all sorts of different backgrounds, all sorts of different experiences, have this in common. And so it's a point of introduction and a point of openness for people that I think can really help people grow. And I think that goes to the ability to communicate. The three of you are very eloquent and very enthusiastic about what it is that you do and what it is that you enjoy. And I think that for everyone's involved in this, to really share that with people wherever you can. Would you not agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, we try. We're trying, because I think there's still lack of female in motorsport and automotive the world. It's quite a lot of men's world, isn't it? I don't think there is a huge respect from women towards motorsport and cars, and it's very often just a question how to start. Exactly as Angelica just before explained, and to show them the way that it's easier maybe as they expect or have doubts. It's super important. And also, to access to events and is quite important. If the wife, the kids, if they join, to let them be part of it, because very often they just come to events with the daddy and they're just around, they're not involved. And I think that is very important, and it's great to see. It's getting more and more. I'm very happy about it. I don't know if you agree. I see more female, more women in this world, and this is great. And I think we should keep on trying and bring them more and more.
Yeah, I think that it's about. Go ahead, Queenie.
No, near us, where we live, there is a hill climb. It's Cop Hill Climb, and it started in 1910, and it's been revived, and it's a charity event. And we're lucky enough to be a patron to it. And they, for example, encourage, because I think some events, as you mentioned before, it's not accessible for an entire family to go, because they are, it's a huge investment for people to go there for a whole day with the children. But here they are doing, for example, for schools, they have soapbox races. So they design cars themselves, and then they are able to, they race down a bit, and they've built them themselves. And if you go and see them, it's genius what they have built by themselves. And, on these hill climbs, and I think Angelica with here in England, the hill climbs, they have the opportunity to take people on the car with you up the hill. It is local hill climbs, it's not racing, it's just a great day for charity, usually for the local area. And then that's accessible to everyone. And I think in those things, and then making, building a soapbox and having that race, I think that's where we will also get future designers and engineers.
And one of the things that that really comes out in hearing all of you speak is also about the fact, especially for things like hill climbs, regularity, rallies, it's about a sense of personal accomplishment, as opposed to circuit racing where, you know, you have to come in front of this other person. It's what is the best I can do in this stage, in this event. And I think that's something that certainly is very useful to young people of all genders, and something especially to build self-esteem while building talents and taking advantage of different abilities. And so I think it would be a wonderful opportunity to really communicate that as best we can.
Nope.
Well, we're almost out of time, so I'm going to just ask each of you to just leave us with sort of one parting thought about what you would like to our audience to understand about what it is that you do, why you do it, and why they should be on the lookout for more events like this. Queenie?
Keeping history alive, I would say. Yes, keeping history alive. Yeah, and bringing it, and yeah, one thing, and from the Mille Miglia, which is always touches my heart, is to see we're showing these amazing cars, but when you see Granny holding the hand of her grandson or granddaughter, you know it. I mean, it's just so special. She's seen the real race, and there she is giving that to the future generations by, you know, showing that. And I think that is always that's such, yeah, it's the touching thing, and keeping history alive and making it, I guess it's becoming, some things are harder, but keeping it accessible to everyone, to give them the opportunity, because the opportunity, like Katerina and Angelica was saying, it's not easy to start out, and that's not even if it's women or men, for everyone it's very difficult to start out in this world, and I guess all three of us, and you, Donald, we're all very lucky and very privileged to have been able to do all the things we are doing.
Absolutely. Angelica?
Well, I agree with Query, is keeping history, because a lot of these events, they have amazing history. And the other thing is to inspire more people. You know, inclusion, we talk about, for me, inclusion is really important. It doesn't matter the gender, it's just inclusion, that this sport is for everybody, and everybody can, you know, can enjoy different part of it. Maybe not everybody wants to be a driver or a driver, but they want to be a marshal. They want to be an engineer. So there is always a space for somebody that wants to be involved in motor racing. So I would love to see more people, you know, doesn't matter where you come from, and have these opportunities to enjoy motorsport as much as we enjoy, and keep it running, and keep running these amazing cars, the old cars, the new cars, and it just, yeah, it's what I would love to see.
And Katerina, finally.
Wyatt, you know, I can only underline what Queen Angelica said, because it's so true, and it is definitely about heritage. So I agree, Queenie, fully about that, because it's a big history we should carry on the next generations. So that's our duty, our responsibility, I would say. And yeah, bringing maybe new people, new young people into this industry would be wonderful. And we should take every chance which we see. Well, if it's hill climb, if it's racing, if it's, you know, classic cars or vintage, that's something we should try harder every day, because it would be wonderful to see all this in 100 years. You know, it would be fantastic to see our children and grandchildren having fun and then carrying this passion on. So yeah.
All right, our closing thought, we have a question from one of our viewers who asks, and this is a thing that I think would be absolutely wonderful for everyone and tough for everyone. So it's a really, really difficult one. So could you each share your most memorable experience on a race or a rally? Katerina.
Wow. Okay. Most memorable.
That is going to be a tough one.
You know, there are a couple which are very memorable. Definitely is. You know, some of the, yeah, of course, from the beginning, I think those we remember very well. And I'm coming back to my very first race ever. It was straight away the 24-hour race. Never raced before. Didn't know what is an apex. Never heard about any perfect line. Well, God knows what it is. Did my race license this month before. Here you go. So yeah, so I have many memories of that. And for sure, you know, like the very simple one, like the sunset after whatever 18 hours of racing. I will never, maybe the most beautiful sunset of my life. But surely, you know, I didn't know how to change gear, you know, back in time, because I was so new into this whole thing. So yeah, so that memory, that was always going from the first straight into third or fourth gear, you know, what I carried on in the Bentley. I never forget that, you know. I can't even say I was doing it for 24 hours. But, you know, it was something what I have to laugh and smile about and think like, oh my God, what I was thinking, you know, entering this finished. And I will always look back on these 24 hours as a start of my personal passion, of my hobby. So yeah, and teamwork, yes, I very much love to think and remember the whole teamwork around and my team and the girls. We were fighting for that. So yeah, that's my most memorable moment.
That's fantastic, Angelica.
Wow, that's a good question.
I'm sure you could change gears, right?
Exactly. I have so many memories, but I think one that really stick to my mind. Somebody tried to steal our money from our sponsorship. So my driver bought the car and he tried to steal the money. So I flew, and I was very young, on my own to rescue this car. And it's just a long story. So this guy was really surprised. I ended up in Sweden chasing him, finding out who he was and real address. And then at the end, I managed to get this car shipped to Mexico. And that car gave me my championship as a woman in Mexico in 2002, 2 years later, after we bought this car, that Carlos and I, we dreamt of that sponsor money, and you know, this guy tried to steal it and then to win the championship, and until now that record stands. So I am the only woman that has. So for me to have gone, yeah, but at that time I was living in Mexico, and you know, to jump on a plane on my own, my mom and dad were terrified, and the ambassador in Sweden, in Mexico, you know, representing Mexico, she was like, my God, they are going to kill you, you know. But I went through everything just to rescue. That can tell you how much I love this sport and how much I am passionate about this sport. And I think you girls, you will do the same if somebody tried to do that. It's just an unreal story. But yeah, I managed to rescue the car, and that car gave, well, with Carlos, I won my championship. So that is one of the most memorable in motorsport story in motorsport.
Angelica, that's not a great memory. That is actually a Hollywood motion picture.
Yeah.
We have to talk about that. Someone's got to write the screenplay for that. That is amazing. And Angelica was kind enough, Queenie, to tee you up to be the final one to share your most memorable experience.
On top that, for sure. No. Memorable. Very. It's a difficult one, I guess. Too. My most horrific memory was when in my first. I guess my first Mille Miglia, when the car broke down and my father made me push it over the finish line. I said I'd never talk to him or anything again. Then another one was that, then another one was that we told nobody, but I was pregnant, 13 weeks, and I was in the Lotus at Silverstone Classic. And I was on the hanger straight, and the car in front of me, the conrod, everything, the car went on fire. I was going, yes, about 130 miles an hour, and this car went on flames in front of me. And in the end, we found the conrod ended up in the grill, and it's a very low car. So I don't know. I'm here. We have a son who is also, you know, into the car world, and a daughter, or will be. And then I guess the most emotional one was the last time my father did with me the Mille Miglia and the SSK, because I kind of knew it, you know, Katerina was there. Yeah, you know, it's a tough old truck, let's say, to drive, and you know, yeah.
That's hard work. It was amazing to see your father and you.
Yeah,
really
that he still wanted to do it. He's quit, and then I convinced him, let's do it one more time, and we did it 4 times. So, you know, it was good. It was good. But
well, thank you all so much. I'd like to thank you, Queenie Lahman, Angelica Fuentes, and Katerina Kavalova. That it has been a wonderful time chatting with you all, and I cannot wait for us all to be able to travel the way we want to, so we can get together at an event and share more of these stories. We need to get the 3 of you here to Newport for sure to share your stories and share some wonderful experiences with us. And I'd also like to invite our audience to watch the AudrainConcours.com website for our next virtual seminar, which will be about Vanderbilt style, Women Take the Wheel, 1905 to 1945, to celebrate an exhibition we have coming up in the museum. And of course, to watch our YouTube channel, where we post 2 videos a week, and our series Mansions and Motorcars with myself and Jay Leno, and lots of programming like this. And thank you so much for being with us today, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Donald. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.